Hey everyone, Jason here from Off the Beaten Path, and today we're picking up where we left off at the last video, just at the eastern end of Wonnangatta here, after crossing the Wonnangatta River. So we're going to be heading northeast along this section of track here, past the turn-off to the Wombat Range and Waterspur Track and onto the Humfray River Track, crosses the Humfray River a number of times, goes past the Humfray River shelter here, works its way up over a hill, another couple of crossings, another good hill here, probably the steepest section of the Humfray River Track through here, before a final crossing of the river, and then we'll be jumping off onto the Waterspur Track. That's a 7-kilometre track that rises about a kilometre vertically over its 7-kilometre length, climbs up on top of the Mount Selwyn Sarah Spur, and then we'll be heading to the Mount Sarah summit at 1,553 metres for our lunch stop on this trip before pushing on. So that's the trip for this video. Hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, Jason here from Off the Beaten Path, and we're continuing on. So if you remember in the last episode, we just crossed the Wonnangatta River, and now we're heading towards and onto the Humfray River Track. So today we're doing the Humfray River Track and then the Waterspur Track and then up to Mount Sarah, to the summit there, which I'm looking forward to. I actually haven't been back to Mount Sarah since the last time I was there, which for those of you that have been watching the channel for a long time would remember that was the first time I did the transfer case on that trip, which was heaps of fun. So yeah, getting stuck into the Humfray River Track here. Straight away, this first crossing, really shallow, really easy. What I did notice is that compared to last time I did Humfray River, which was in January of 2022 with Bruce from Walpole Surveying, there's definitely been some maintenance done on these entrances and exits since then. Looks like the parks guys have been through and dropped in a bit of gravel and tidied them up. So I'm expecting that these entrances and exits aren't going to be quite as gnarly as a rule as they were last time Bruce and I did them, and of course it was a lot deeper back then as well. It's the difference, I guess, doing it middle of summer when there's been some rain about to doing it at the tail end of autumn, before winter has really set in and we've had too much rain. So after that initial crossing, as you've seen, the track sort of climbs up over a hill, and it's not too long before we're heading back down towards the river, and that's pretty much the theme for the Humfray River Track. So again, here you can see some of that gravel that I believe has been added in just to smooth these entrances and exits out. Really nice crossing again. Like the Humfray River Track is just really picturesque. It's a track that I always enjoy driving. I've probably driven it 4 or 5 times now, and yeah, I was pretty pleased to be back on it again. It is one that is seasonally closed, of course, so this should reopen after the end of October and closes from the King's birthday long weekend. And what a surprise, here we are at yet another crossing of the Humfray River. And as you can see there, the water levels are just well down on what they were last time. I think one of the intro photos, or one of the photos that I used in the intro, was actually taken on this crossing by Bruce last time we were here, and that's when the water's like, you know, almost up to the bonnet. Whole different ball game today, but still a really nice drive nonetheless. Last time I drove this, we'll come back to that, because right here we've just reached the junction where on the right hand side you've got the Waterspur and the Wombat Range tracks, and then we continue on the left here on the Humfray River Track, which is obviously where we're going. Just this exit was a little steep and a little rocky, but plenty of traction. Nothing a little bit of right boot didn't solve. Not sure why I slowed down quite so much there. really have no idea. And as you can see, this track sort of climbs up. There's some views off to the left there of the river. And does head up sort of over a hill before coming back to the river, of course. Most of this track is pretty easy driving. It's really only the entrances and exits that are a little bit tricky, and probably one last section just before we get to the Waterspur Track. So again, this entrance exit here was a little more eroded than most, so you can see hopefully in the camera there, reasonably steep little drop in here. This still looks to me like it's had some gravel put here since I was here last. It's just that the bank has eroded sort of further away. So the crossing itself is actually a pretty shallow crossing, and looking at this exit on the other side, again, I think a lot of that rock or gravel has been introduced in the last year or so. Pretty clear path on the left hand side, a little bit eroded on the right hand side, so it was pretty much just a case here of hugging that left bank and trying to not let the wheels slip down too much on that right hand side. And let the traction control do its thing and lift the vehicle up and out of that exit. As I said, there hadn't been a lot of rain recently, but didn't stop us having some puddles along the way. And we didn't sort of stop and film too many of these crossings because they were pretty shallow, so there wasn't going to be a lot of interesting footage to be had stopping and shooting external shots. We did get a couple of them in for you though. This little crossing here is almost over before it's begun. Very picturesque though. Definitely one of my favourite, if not most favourite way to enter and exit Wonnangatta is via this track. You can see this side, it's also a little chewed up, and it's a little bit longer crossing here where you sort of head down the river a little bit, and you can see that exit already. You can see sort of the exposed clay there on the right hand side, so you know this one's going to be a little more interesting. So you can see some definite wheel marks there on the right hand side. A much more suitable looking ramp on the left hand side, but it's not super wide. So I decided logically to try and attack that left hand side, but just try and crawl it up. You can see that front wheel's actually just losing contact, dropping into that hole there, and not allowing us to sort of crawl it up. So I think we've decided to have a go round two, and maybe with a little bit more mumbo, or not. Going backwards and forwards, most likely I'm trying to get that rear diff lock to lock in. Doesn't always cooperate. Yeah. A little bit of a wheel lift, and we're up. So situations like that rear diff lock does make a big difference. So that same crossing, as you can see, it's not really very deep. The challenge here is the exit, it's not the crossing, that's for sure. And Dan's just eyeing it off the same as I did. A little bit of momentum, and he's just driven straight up that. Paul in his FJ is coming along, not too far behind. And he doesn't even stop for a look, he just keeps going up that left hand side like there was nothing there at all. So as I was saying earlier, one of the most asked questions when I posted the Humfray River Track video last time was, can I take a camper trailer? Well, I think the answer to that is still maybe. If you've got a friend with you who's willing to help winch you up some obstacles, then yes, you probably can, but a few of these exits are probably a little bit gnarly to be dragging the weight of a trailer behind you. Certainly when the water's as low as this, it would be a lot easier to have a camper trailer with you. A couple of hunters just up ahead here, so there was quite a large group of hunters out and about on this particular day. As you can see there, water's smooth as glass, nice shallow crossing and plenty of room to get past those guys. Yeah, they certainly had a few mates out and about in the hills. Nice steady climb out of that exit, but not overly long. As you can sort of glimpse there, as you come up on that hill, you sort of crest that, the river's down to the left, and yeah, we're climbing some more here. So this hump sort of goes up past the river, reasonably steep this section, and again, this is the kind of terrain I think it'd be fairly challenging to have a camper trailer on the back of. You can see this hill here is a little bit loose and scrabbly in places. And you can see just there coming over that hump, lost a little bit of traction, lost a little bit of momentum. Not that I was going super fast or anything, but I think in those sort of situations, you got even a 1.5 ton camper trailer, a pretty light one hanging off the back of you. I think that's where you could find you just don't have the traction to continue forward and get up the hill. So not so much about engine power, but just maybe not the traction. So yeah, look, I'd be fairly reticent to take a camper trailer on this track. It's one of the things I've been thinking about. Once I get the 76 up and running, thinking long and hard about putting a rooftop tent on my Drifter Dot camper trailer, and then utilising that a little bit more on some upcoming trips, because it's a great trailer, really well set up, and really brought it to use with the family, which is why it's an equipped trailer. It doesn't have a rooftop tent because we carried a large family ground tent, but the kids aren't so much into camping these days as they're getting older, so we might modify it with a hard shell. And once you get past that steep section, as you can see here, it's quite a long, steady climb. And then once you get up the top, there's some opportunities along this section. It's almost like a ridgeline track along here, along the spur of a range. There are some opportunities for some nice views either side. Camera's not really capturing those. But this is part of what makes the Humfray River Track a lot of fun in my view. You've got flat sections close to the river, you've got a heap of river crossings, you've got steep uphill and downhill sections, you've got some great views. It's really got a bit of everything, and it's just a great fun track to drive. Connection wise, you've got a lot of options. Obviously the southern end takes you into Wonnangatta, but you can just as easily turn left and head across over towards Crooked River, that sort of thing. The northern end takes you up towards Mount Sarah and or Mount Selwyn. You can see here on this section quite a steep descent, bit of loose rock and gravel on the track, some loose branches from some tree fall, but make no mistake, this is quite steep. And again, just imagine you're coming down here, you've got the weight of 1.5 tons of camper trailer pushing on the back of your vehicle. I'm not sure that'd be ideal. So while a lot of the track is really quite flat and terrain that you could probably easily take a camper trailer on, there's certainly sections like this that just aren't. And keeping in mind that once you're on the Humfray River Track, the Waterspur Track where we exit is actually your first opportunity to exit from this track. So as you can see there on the screen, we're just approaching the Humfray River Shelter, which is an old shelter, basically like an old hay shed almost. That's not what it is, but what I mean by that is it's a structure that has a roof and no walls. Really popular camping spot, nearly always occupied. There's another large group of hunters in there, could belong to the same group as the guys we saw out on the tracks, I'm not too sure. But yeah, really popular camping spot in there. And of course, once you get past that, it's not too far to the next river crossing.
Here we go.
So we did take the opportunity here to get some nice external footage. Shout out to Dan from Out There with Dan for sharing some of his footage with me. As I said, by all means get over to Dan's channel and check it out. He's got some great content and videos over there. So that's Out There with Dan. If you Google that on YouTube, his channel will come up. This was just a nice picturesque crossing. Again, none of these were particularly deep or difficult at the moment, but we thought we'd film this one because it was just a nice looking crossing. And Paul coming across in his FJ Cruiser. Nice colour too, that blue. And of course, we're not done with crossings of the Humfray River just yet. These are back to being fairly flat crossings with not very difficult entrances or exits. You can see a little side stream there feeding into the Humfray. And yeah, you exit onto a nice, easy to drive track. It's really not too far at all, like literally there's not much footage there at all that I cut out, and sure enough you're coming around another corner and crossing the river yet again. This is another one where you drive down the river just a little bit, maybe not quite as much as the earlier one. And again, the exit here is in really good condition. I think it's been built up a little bit. You can see some wheel ruts there sort of starting to form, but for us on this particular day, traction's good, no momentum really needed, just crawl up it, and that way you don't damage the track either, and you leave it in good condition for the next person. This section follows a little bit of a run through the bush before coming back to the river. Always seems to be a little bit wet through this section, as in there's a few puddles. I don't know if there's a spring nearby or something like that, but there always seems to be a few damp sections through this part of the track, almost irrespective of what rain there has or hasn't been. Could be a clay base to the track there too that holds the water. And this is the start of the steepest climb on the Humfray River Track. So it starts here as a long, steady climb, and then when you get over this hump, it cuts into a much steeper climb with some really well cut out ruts in it. So you can see here, I've spanned the ruts on this lower section, managed to drive on the right hand side, and you can see how well cut out they are. Now as you get towards the top here, check the branches there on that track, on that tree. You can stay on the right, but not the whole time. And then this last section, I just dropped into the ruts and gave it some mumbo, and up we went. So that is one of the more challenging sections of the Humfray River Track just there, and I'm not sure I got much of that on video last time we did this track. Probably just this last section with Bruce driving. I think the GoPro was out of battery at the time or something. So that hopefully gives you a little bit better snapshot. Dan's taken a similar line to me here in the Grey Dingo. It looks like he's spanned that rut on the way up, and then, like me, he's had to come across to avoid those branches or sticks sticking out on that tree, and he's gone, in this case, all the way across and spanned the other rut to finish up nicely. And Paul's bringing the FJ, having no trouble at all, I'm sure. Looks like he's just dropped into those ruts, even a little earlier than I did, and again for this last section he's just stayed in the ruts and driving it up. No wheel spin, just nice and controlled, making short work of it. But yeah, first time I drove this was in the rain. And that was just line the ruts up, plant the foot and hang on. It's a good fun little hill, eh?
Yeah. I'm sure a few people have come unstuck there.
Yeah, so as you just heard me say there, the very first time I ever drove up that was on the way back from Wonnangatta, and it was in the rain, and it was wet and it was slick. Fortunately, it hadn't been raining too long. I think if you'd had a lot of rain, you'd be no chance. But I was in a group and we did manage to all get up there and get out. And yeah, as Dan suggested, I reckon a few people have probably come up stuck there. I could imagine that if it had been wet, you could get to that section of track and just find that you can't get up it, and you'd be faced with either winching or turning around and going back, because apart from at the very start there's no side tracks off the Humfray River till you get further along. So as you can see, once you're up there, you descend back again down towards the river, and that was another sort of steep descent, not as clayey as the other side though. So a little bit more traction, and sure enough we're into another river crossing here. Again, still pretty shallow, and both the entrances and exits here in pretty good condition. And yeah, there's another hunter up here. He wasn't with the other guys. I think we stopped and said a quick g'day to him. Yeah, plenty of them around. And again, this section here, as we come towards, well, it's not really the end of the Humfray River Track, but it's the end of the set part of the Humfray River Track that we're going to drive, because we are getting pretty close to where the Waterspur Track actually meets the Humfray River Track. A little bit of a diversion here around a fallen tree. That's how tracks end up with these bends in them. Years from now, somebody goes, why does the track bend like that? Because a tree fell down and we all just drove around it. And here we are. The Humfray River Track does continue on towards the left there. That'll join up with the White's Track, or there's a continuation of the Humfray River Track, and then also Riley's Track, which will loop you back around to the other end of Wonnangatta, is down a little bit further there as well. So we'll have to drive that section at some point, but today we're heading up the Waterspur Track. And again, I've driven this track many times, but I think every time I've come through it's either been dark or I've had no batteries in the GoPro. So great to capture this one on film. This is a pretty steep track. It really is. Starts off with that little flat section at the start to lull you into a false sense of security, and then it's just a big climb. Long climb. This track is 7 kilometers long. And there's 2 distinct sections in it that climb. So there's this first section that's a little bit flatter or undulating through the middle, and then the last couple of Ks are a big long climb as well. every time you sort of think you're getting to the top, you crest one of those humps and you see more track in front of you still going up. This track has generally been in really good condition, similar to what you're seeing now. So it's not so much a difficult drive in terms of, it's not difficult to choose a line or anything like that, but it's a difficult drive insofar as it is going to work your vehicle pretty hard, because you're just going to, it's a long, steady, straight up climb. As you can see there on the screen, in the first 1.4 kilometres, the Waterspur Track actually climbs over 400 metres, nearly 440 metres in the first 1.4 kilometres. That's like a 1 in 5 grade on average, which is pretty solid. And of course, there's sections of the track that are a lot steeper than that because it's not a consistent gradient all the way up. As you can see, this section here is a good steady climb, and we're still going up. We haven't had a lot of respite, so imagine this on a 35-degree day. Your car's been working hard, and you hit this, and you're actually asking a fair bit of your vehicle. So again, I wouldn't recommend towing anything up this. I think that's asking an awful lot of your vehicle. The other exits, which I haven't driven Riley's track or the rest of the Humfray River Track or White's track, so definitely got to do that sometime. Not sure what they're like, but yeah, I certainly wouldn't take this route if you were going to try and tow something. As you can see, it looked like we were getting a flatter section there for a little while, but no, another big long hill. Literally, as the text on the screen says, yes, a few minutes later, literally was a few minutes. I cut out a fair bit of footage there. We're still going up. And that's what this track is. It's just a grind all the way up. It's fun to drive, but it is going to work your vehicle out. If you've got overheating issues in your vehicle, this is probably going to find them for you. Now at this point here, I think we've hit that roughly halfway, 2/3 point up the track, and we do sort of flatten out and have a little bit of an undulating section through here for a while. But of course, it's not too long, and we're going up again. Now this later section, the track is a little bit looser, a little bit rockier. But definitely a cracking drive. The track itself's a good width, so look, if you do meet somebody coming the other way, you can overtake and all that. So in that regard, it's a really good track to drive. I wouldn't say it's a dangerous track, but definitely one you want to keep your wits about you, and definitely one that's going to work your vehicle pretty hard, particularly if you're tackling it in the middle of summer, in the middle of the day. Of course, I'm sure you're surprised we're not at the top yet. We are getting there. As I said, this Waterspur Track is about 7 k's from the Humfray River up to the road that joins us up towards Mount Sarah. Now that is the Tea Tree Range Road. Fairly typical sort of high country track with lots of gravel on this section. We didn't find any issues with traction on this section, and in the conditions we had on this particular day. And yeah, as we get towards the end of the track here, you can see on the screen there that over its 7 kilometre length, the Waterspur Track actually rises or climbs about 1 kilometre vertically, 1,000 meters up. So over a 7-kilometer journey, you're going to climb vertically 1 kilometer. So I think that's a similar climb to Billy Goats, but Billy Goats is a much longer track. So yeah, that gives you some idea. But Billy Goats could be a little longer, little higher than that. I'm not 100% sure on that, but similar. As you just saw on the screen, we turned right onto the Tea Tree Range Road. Left would take you back towards Mount Selwyn. Definitely time when the track's open that I've got to get up there again. I'll take the 76 up there. That'll be good fun. We headed right towards Mount Sarah, and as you get down towards Mount Sarah, there is a turn off on the right, which will take you to the Tea Tree Spur, and on the left, which takes you to the Sarah Spur Track. So in that particular case, we want to take the Sarah Spur Track. And then as you get a little bit further along that, you can see here there's another junction where left will take you to the Sarah Spur, which will head you down. We'll go down that way later. That'll head you down to the Wonnangatta River. But in this particular case, we want to head right up to the Mount Sarah summit. Now, as I said, I haven't been here for a couple of years now, so it's good to get back here. It's not one of those summits where you get great views, and obviously with the weather the way it is today, that was never going to happen. It is fairly well wooded in. It's a clearing on the top of this summit for a helipad for medevac use and probably bushfire rescues, that sort of thing. So it's not a summit that you come to get great views. But it is a good cleared space to stop for some lunch.
Yeah,
like,
okay.
You know, if there's the whole family, I'll pull the other table out, set that up. It's and then usually everything you're cooking's here, and you got plates and everything on the other table. So, but yeah, and that's 2 seconds to get out as well.
Yeah, it works great, I reckon.
Yeah, look, I've been really happy with it. And having the paper towel up there on just a bit of picture framing wire is, super convenient as well.
So yeah, time for some lunch at Sarah Spur. I think I was the only one cooking. I cooked lunch, but a couple of burgers on some brioche buns never go astray. It was a nice clearing there with 3 wagons to pull up, and it was certainly a great first leg of the journey with Dan and Paul. Thoroughly enjoyable trip, and looking forward to the rest of it. I did take them over to find the survey mark. So last time I was here, Bruce from Walpole Surveying pointed this one out to me. He actually went looking for it and found it. It is sort of hidden away off to the side of this clearing over here, and it's only marked by a couple of little stakes in the ground. There's no actual trig marker or tower, which is what you'd normally see on a summit. There's just a survey marker hidden between these 2 little unassuming wooden posts here. And that's the survey marker there for Mount Sarah. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Like this video if you liked it. Leave some comments or questions down below. We will see you in the next video.